What's the most messed up thing someone casually admitted to you? When I was about 15 years old, and a friend admitted he had drilled a hole through his closet wall into his little sister's room to peek in on her, and presumably friends, while changing. I'm guessing she was around 12 at the time. Looking back, I wish I had said something to his parents about it, but I definitely cut our friendship after that incident. Edit. Awesome. One of my highest rated comments on Reddit is about a dude in high school creeping on his little sister. I was in summer camp, cabin of girls about 13 years old, and we were casually chatting, telling stories. This one girl is talking about her family. I don't remember if it was a relative or her brother's friend, but she ended her story with, "And that's when he graped me." I didn't really know what grape was at the time, but the cabin got silent. Our counselor got so serious, almost like she was angry. I guess she was, but I was confused why she'd be mad at the girl, and curled up next to the girl and talked to her in a low voice for a while. Lights went out and I don't think we ever talked about that. It wasn't until years later that I realized the gravity of what she'd said and why my counselor reacted that way. I was at a bar one time and overheard an older guy, probably mid to late 60s, tell the other guy that he just got out of prison for killing his daughter's abusive ex-husband. He just dropped it out of nowhere, lol. Seemed like a nice guy, to be honest. Old friend once told me he had a thing for horses. Casually, like breathing, and then he started describing why being mounted by a horse was appealing. I am still upset by this. What the fuck? I didn't even ask either. He just took a bong rip and was like, "You know what? I have never sobered up faster." It's probably the most common, but the way people so casually talk about how they hate their spouse. Not just like, "Oh, we had an argument and I'm big mad about it and I need to vent." Like, the way they consistently and casually just reference hating their spouse like it's the most normal thing in the world. It's sad and disturbing. I was in high school, and while I was waiting for pickup with a fever of 103 degrees Fahrenheit, a girl from my class casually sat down next to me and admitted to being a prostitute. She also admitted to engaging in acts with dogs for money. We were both 16. I thought it was genuinely a fever dream of some sort, so when I recovered I asked them if that was a real conversation we had. Much to my misfortune, it wasn't a fever dream and they admitted to it all over again. Worst part is that when I mentioned it to a teacher, they said there was little they could do as I had no proof and they were emancipated and living independently. It was incredibly messed up. So we're sitting around the table at the pub casually chatting and catching up when my one friend arrives, sits down, orders a drink, and I ask her what's new, and this was her response. "I'm seeing this new sugar daddy and he likes to put his Rolex in my pussy, he then takes it out and wears it." Naturally I had about 100 questions after this, but suffice so say that is probably the most messed up thing someone has casually admitted to me. Had a sweet old lady I would see daily at a Subway and would chat daily with. I asked if she had any kids one day because she always joked I was her extra daughter. Completely casually she told me she had one daughter. About a month old she stomped her to death. She had intense postpartum depression that turned into psychosis. She was in jail for a long time and always wanted kids, but after that she felt too much guilt and never had any more. She genuinely was a wonderful lady. She had many warning signs and attempted to seek help but wasn't taken seriously. She lived every day to honor her deceased daughter. She did a ton of charity work and was one of the coolest people I've ever met, but man, it was quite a shock to hear that story casually at a Subway. I lost my virginity at 14 and she was a lot more depraved than I was. Made me feel bad about naive type of thing. She cut me with a razor a few times during sex. I was very scared but thought she was suicidal, so I stayed. One of the most fucked up things I remember was talking to her dad at the kitchen table one day. I was at her house helping her with yard work to pay back her debt of literally breaking her neighbor's house, and he straight up told me she was a lost cause and I needed to get out. I did, but goddamn, what a sad scene. Someone I knew, while drunk at a bar, was depressed and crying and admitted that while he was volunteering at an orphanage in Africa, he burned a man alive when he found one of the 6-year-old girls from his orphanage bloody, broken, and raped. She said the man had did it. I've never told anyone, but the whole situation makes me sick to think about. I wouldn't have done what he did. I would have gone to the authorities, but I can understand his mindset. Once my now ex-husband's best friend was over and they were both very drunk, reminiscing about when they and all their friends all had sex with the strippers at another friend's bachelor party. They didn't realize I was in the room and heard them disclosing this. Were you together, dating or married, during the time period of this bachelor party? Would make it even so much worse. Had been married for 16 years. Got divorced the 17th year. A man once told me he would habitually find young homeless men and lure them back to his home where he'd use food and shelter as a bargaining chip for sex. Tales from the psych ward. I really hope that guy was just delusional and not actually a predator. My son was chatting to me about his friend at school. He was 6 at the time. I was emptying/loading this dishwasher. He was telling me his little friend didn't like their mom's new boyfriend. I was just thinking the boyfriend had different rules or something. Then he says the boyfriend hurt them and did something that made white sticky pee come out of his penis. I have no poker face, I froze. Facing the dishwasher and said, "Oh. That's really bad. Did she say this happened recently?" He said yes. So I said that I would take care of it, but that someone might come to talk to him about his friend and her brothers. I told him he would be helping a lot, but for right now, don't mention it to anyone else. After I put him to bed, I called CPS and cried for almost an hour. Long story short, within 5 days there was a news report about the boyfriend being arrested on multiple counts of child SA. The sick fuck had molested all 3 of those babies. My son told me years later that he had figured out what happened when he got older, but he was never traumatized by it because I handled it so calmly. I was not calm, except when he was around. In grade school, a girl told us she was here because her grandpa had sex with her mom. I know a guy whose parents are bio siblings. They were 14 and 15 when he was born, got mostly raised by his grandparents. They were hardcore religious, sex education was not done, so the teens found out that having sex felt great. They didn't know you shouldn't do it with family or that you can get pregnant. Abortion was also not an option. Guy was nice, bit strange in his behavior, and had some health problems. Took care of this guy, now deceased. He came straight from prison to my unit, locked down, and he was super sweet. I was helping him to the bathroom and he casually asked if I knew he went to prison. I said yeah and asked what he did. In the most casual way ever he told me he murdered his brother-in-law for molesting his 5-year-old niece. I was completely stunned by the way he said it. Said he walked in on the act and bashed his skull in with his fist and then called the police on himself. You'd be surprised by what the elderly actually admit to when they're racked with dementia or on their deathbed. I used to work with this guy who was like super nice and upbeat like all the time, like too much to be normal, like horrible stuff would be happening at work and everyone would be complaining. He would be like Mickey Mouse, happy and giggly, and be like, "Hey guys, turn that frown upside down, we'll get through this together." One time when it was just him and me, I told him his constant chipperness kind of freaked me out and he looked at me and went, "Yeah. You know, I didn't always used to be like this. When I was younger I had so much anger inside of me and my dad told me I was going to grow up to beat my wife and kids like he did and I just thought, no I'm not, so I made myself be happy and now it's just easier to be like this." I just had no idea what to say back to that, haha. I mean, I worked in psych for almost a decade and had patients tell me horrible things all the time and yet this one stuck with me. When I was 14, I was admitted to a psych ward for a 72-hour hold. The hospital was small enough that it put teens and little kids together, so it was a mixture of kids my age and some really young kids. Anyway, there was a boy there around 5 years old. I kinda felt bad for him. He was really shy and nervous, and sometimes parents would just claim their kid was crazy to avoid taking care of them, so I thought he might have been one of those kids. He was coloring in the main area. I sat down and asked him if he knew why he was there. He pulled the lollipop out of his mouth and said, "I stabbed my sister in the eye with scissors," like he was telling me about the weather. I still think about that kid sometimes. I really hope he got help. Surprised he was allowed to have a lollipop. To be honest, the hospital was relatively lax. Sometimes the nurses would bring us little treats for being good, not killing ourselves, but it was never without strict supervision. I think he was there for the long haul too, so they probably really felt for him. I'm a hairstylist. One time I had a client who told me her baby daddy was watching their baby while she got her hair done. She then proceeded to tell me that technically he's not even allowed to be around their baby because he went to prison for sex trafficking, but don't worry, he didn't actually have sex with the girls, he just arranged things. I've never been so horrified. That they lost their virginity to their cousin when they were 12. Weirdo coworker of mine at an ice cream shop when I was in high school working there. Back in college I went to a friend's house and talked to his neighbor who was on his back porch. He immediately let it be known that he had snorted a line out of the 3 pounds of white powder that was sitting on a picnic table outside, assuming the unbagged pile was $100,000 of drugs sitting on a table behind a $500 per month apartment. It was dog flea powder. Diatomaceous earth? Might as well have snorted a line of sand. His response to me was, "Admit it, you would have done it too." I didn't even know the fucking guy. I have no idea what it is about me, but it seems I'm a very approachable person and people tend to confide in me whether they've known me 5 minutes or 5 years. It's always been this way for me. I'm pretty used to people I barely know telling me shit I absolutely never needed to hear. Over 30 years of that didn't prepare me for a guy on a first date telling me about sexually assaulting someone, proudly saying how good a guy he is because he stopped when someone intervened. I tried to not react too much because pissing him off seemed like a bad idea, but he still picked up on it and got super defensive and angry. He then proceeded to suggest a second date. A girl in a bar one told me that she aggressively pursued a guy that was married with kids just to see if she could steal him away. She broke a family up as a game. I'm aware that the guy was the one that stepped out on his family and I'm not giving him a pass, but that's really messed up. I had a roommate who told me that she drugged her parents as a teen so she could go to a party. Then she followed that up with how she drugged a dog so she could TP a house. What the fuck? So she admitted to being a sociopath basically? Overriding the autonomy of multiple people and animals, risking their safety, in order to go practice debauchery and vandalism. She absolutely did. She also mentioned she had empathy for sexual offenders because she was accused of molesting her cousin as a kid. All of this was information she told me without prompting. So wild. I felt extra unsafe around her. I had a manager going on and on about how hot Emma Watson was. This was right after the first Harry Potter movie came out. Total fucking creep. Reminds me of the manager I had at my first job. I was 17 and working at a big combination farm stand, market, petting zoo, with bouncy slides and such, very popular with families, middle school field trips etc. My boss was a middle-aged dude and would always try to bro up with us guys, saying stuff like pointing at a 13-year-old and ask, "Would you hit that or nah? If I was your age I'd hit that." Some of the guys were dumb as rocks and just joke back. He tried that shit on me and I just said, "No, why are you talking about children that way?" in a completely flat tone. Idiot gave me this look like he suddenly realized he'd been fucking up the whole summer. I guess nobody had reacted that way before, but it was a lame summer job to me, so I didn't care if he knew I thought he was a creep. In hindsight I should have vigorously reported him, but I was young in the workforce. He ended up getting fired over drinking in one of the bouncy castles. We were at the elementary school guidance counselor's office and they were talking about good and bad touches. They were saying a parent should never leave bruises on you, and this boy in my class stood up and said, "Like this?" And he lifted his shirt to show bruises on his back. It went silent. They made us all leave except him. He got pulled from his home and went into foster care. Oh my gosh, that poor boy. I'm grateful they opened the conversation in a way where he could reveal his abuse before it got worse. Not that I have much confidence in the foster system, but I'm glad they stepped in. I saw him while we were in high school, or maybe right after. He was doing pretty well, at least as far as it seemed or he said. Many years ago a guy I knew from around town came into the bar my ex and I worked at, that he had been drinking at the night before. He told us he hit his mailbox and some kind of animal the night before. He thought maybe a raccoon or something, because his truck was all messed up with fur and blood on it, and his mailbox was messed up. He actually hit and killed a 17-year-old kid. Drunk driving. When he came home he also hit his mailbox. Did he get arrested or tried or go to jail? His whole family was from India. A few days after he killed the kid, my ex and I were brought into a deposition since we were at the bar when he was served drunk, and he also came in the day after. They wanted to arrest him but needed enough evidence, and all they had was him in the area on camera and his damaged truck that had already been washed. He ended up leaving the country back to India and I haven't heard anything since. During an Alcoholic Anonymous meeting this guy kept talking about the people he graped. What? Did anyone report him? He's done time already. Maybe not for all his crimes, but I don't know. My cousin admitted she lied about her husband molesting their daughter. I did it to win custody. The whole family was going to lynch him. He was run out of the area. Damn, Did bro get his name cleared eventually, or is he still on the chopping block? This was decades later. She was drunk at a wedding dance when she confessed. When I was in middle school, I went to a drugstore with a classmate, and afterwards she showed me all the stuff she stole and acted as if that was completely normal. A few days later we were chatting during lunch break, and she casually mentioned how she likes catching mice alive and then watch them drown in a barrel full of rainwater they had outside their house. I completely avoided her after that. My dad used to be a drug dealer and user. He's been clean and sober for a while now. He admitted to chopping off the tips of some guy's fingers for trying to stiff him some money during a deal. Years later I brought up that story to him to laugh about it. He gave me a small chuckle and just said, "I've done way worse things, son." That was a quiet car ride home after he said that. I was standing in line for coffee with a coworker I'd only known for a week. We were just chatting about the weather, when he sighed and blurted out, "You know, sometimes I don't wash my car for months just to see if someone writes 'wash me' on the dirt, because that's the only way I feel like someone notices my existence." I just wanted a caramel latte, and I got a cry for help from a wounded soul right by the croissant window. I couldn't look him in the eye for the rest of the day, and he acted like he'd just commented on the dollar exchange rate. Now every time I see a dirty car, I want to hug it. We were in 4th grade English class, and my friend who sat adjacent to me turned to me and described in detail how her stepdad came into her room at night and SA'd her. I had promised her that I wouldn't tell anyone, but thank God our other friend that sat in front of her, Katie, heard everything. So, on the way to lunch, Katie and I whispered to each other what to do. We decided that Katie should go to the principal immediately and tell them first. Then after lunch, I got called into the office and I confirmed what Katie had said. The police and CPS became involved that day. I didn't see my friend or her younger brother again until high school after that day, but I was happy that she was safe. CPS actually pulled her out of class at about 1 p.m. that day. I'll never forget her eyes holding back tears when she went with them, but she was looking at me the whole time because she knew what I had done. No regrets. When you saw her in high school, did you speak to her? Yes, we became friends again. We didn't talk about what had happened though. I also became friends with her little brother. They were still in foster care, but living good lives in a safe home.